And so we are live. Hey everyone,
Hi.
nice to see you all joining. Yeah, let's take a couple of minutes to wait for everybody to join in. And in the meantime, we will do some introductions. Today will be an interesting topic, and I also have an interesting guest with me, Leanne. So guys, if you can maybe message in the chat where you're joining from so that we can understand that the chat is working fine. You can hear us, you can see us. That would be awesome. Okay, so I can see that Eva is joining from France. Daniel is saying that everything is okay. Some people from Denmark, India, Jurmala. Yeah, so it's in Latvia. That's my home country. Nice to see some folks from my home country joining in as well. Cool. So we have a good bunch of people joining from all over the world. That's always nice to see. And I hope you guys are all staying safe during these times. So I hope everything is going well for you. And let me get the slides on the screen. And I think we can slowly start. Here we go. Guys, also if you can message, if you can see the slides well, that would be awesome. And yep, so Vikas is messaging that you can see the slides, perfect. So yeah, as I've said, we're about to kick off a very cool webinar, a very exciting webinar with a very exciting topic. Today I'm with you, Alex. I'm product lead here at Localized, for those who don't know. And also I know that we have some people who actually are not using Localized, are not familiar with the Localized even. And I will briefly tell you what Localized is about, and then I will give a word to my co-host today, Leanne, and she will talk a little bit about herself and about Intercom. So Localized is a modern TMS tool. We provide a product that helps companies to localize their software and to achieve a continuous localization workflow. And we have, more than 1,800 customers now spread across 80 plus countries and rapidly growing. And as I've said, today I'm joined by Leanne Harte, who is the manager of the customer support team at Intercom. And probably Intercom is a company that most of you guys know, but I will let Leanne introduce herself and also tell a little bit about Intercom. Leanne,
Cool.
please go ahead.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today. This is my first ever webinar, so I'm slightly nervous, but I'm also very excited to be here. So as Alex said, I'm a manager of the customer support team at Intercom, and I've been at Intercom for almost 5 years, which is wild. It's both flown by and also feels like forever. A little bit about Intercom. Have an absolute bunch of products that help you support your customers and keep connected with your customers. And our mission is to make online business personal. To sum it up very briefly, we were founded in 2011. We've over 30,000 customers, and we're currently in 5 cities around the world and supporting all of our customers from many of those cities, which is fantastic. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. And Leanne actually is very humble. She also didn't mention that she's a songwriter herself, which I found very fascinating when we first met. And yeah, so today's topic is localized support and why it's crucial for your company's long-term international success. And I believe it's very good to have a company from one side, Localized, who is advocating for the localization, and the company like Intercom, who's really nailed the concept of the customer support and the collaboration. And so let me flip over the slides. So the agenda for today would be, we'll talk a little bit about Intercom and their support team. How are they doing things? We will also talk about why not doing localization is guaranteed to be far more costly in the long run. We'll discuss the role of the customer support in the localization, and actually also in the global in the company strategy. And we'll also cover at the end how to introduce localization in your support team. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll have a Q&A where you will be able to ask the questions. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Livestorm UI, so on the right-hand side, you have a chat, but you also have another tab which is called questions. And if you can post your questions there, that would be awesome. but we also have Emil's, my colleague Emil's today, who will be moderating the chat and the questions, and he will direct you to the questions panel if you cannot find it. And then, yeah, as I've said, we will take all the questions at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, let's kick the things off. So Leanne, maybe you said that you've been with Intercom for quite a while, and it was a wild ride. So maybe you can say how your team evolved over that time. I think that would be interesting for our audience to know.
Yeah, for sure. We've absolutely evolved quite a lot since I started in 2016. I think when I started, we were like globally at around like 15 people or something mad like that. And now we have 72 people altogether globally. And we have a team made up of customer support specialists, customer support engineers, and we have senior members of the team as well. And yeah, I guess like over those years, like we've seen a lot of different phases of growth. And each phase sort of required its own strategy, which I guess is quite interesting. You know, for example, like when we were a fast-growing startup, it was all about matching headcount to customer growth, and all about sort of like, you know, keeping up with volume, but also maintaining that great support experience, which is really important to us. And then I guess like fast forwarding to now and this next chapter that we're at the moment, you know, we're trying to think more strategically about scaling for growth versus just kind of throwing headcount at it. So we're looking at like leaning into proactive support and into like self-serve and helping customers help themselves as much as possible. And then alongside that, you know, aiming to improve our human support experience by making it more efficient. So, but like, yeah, a lot has happened, a lot has changed over the years. We're big into experimenting and trying out new things and learning from the things that we try and getting feedback from our team and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Awesome. And I think in our private conversation, you also mentioned that you as a support team, basically you use the Intercom to do your job as well. And you've during your evolution, you understood some of the needs of your customers that they have when they evolve. My question to you would be, so you're now present in multiple countries and you have a very widespread customer base as well. So when you have realized that you need to build a global customer support team, and what are maybe some of the key challenges that you face during this process?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we've kind of always had a global support strategy in a way. Like ever since I've been at the company, we've had people supporting from around the world. You know, that's kind of always been the way. And we've always had customers from around the world. And I guess that's, you know, what you find with software as a service. It's like once you launch that piece of software, your product is global. Like it's out there to the world, you know. And so so we've always had, and I guess when I started, we've had a team. We had a team in Dublin who supported like our EMEA customers. We had a team back then in San Francisco who supported our NORAM customers. We had remote people who worked kind of around the globe as well to kind of keep that connection. And in terms of locations, I guess there's always that choice to be made. Like, you know, do you want to do that follow the sun model, match teams to customer locations? Do you want to use some teams as like a cleanup crew for the busier regions? Like we've tried both of those things. And kind of what we're more doing at the moment is that more like regional support model, like centralizing support out of like Dublin for EMEA, like I was saying there. We're also in the process now of scaling up a premium support team in Sydney, which is really exciting. And it's a new kind of thing that we're trying out. And this is kind of where we're at today. But like, this is, you know, not saying that we'd always go with this type of model. We're always, I guess the key for us is evolving to kind of match customer needs and company strategy. So yeah, so I guess to answer your main question, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but we've kind of always had that. And for me, I mean, there are definitely challenges along the way. Like some of the challenges that we faced would have been, you know, as our customer base grows and becomes kind of like wider around the world. Like we've had, you know, issues in the past where like we had our team work out of one inbox and just work out of like one queue, and then we'd have time zone mismatches along the way. And what you find in those situations is it becomes kind of challenging because you're trying to quickly resolve an issue for a customer, but you have to wait a day for them to get back to you, and then they have to wait a day for you to get back to them. And you know, there can be challenges in that type of thing. really grown and kind of figured out how we can approach this more recently. Like we've kind of like built out more regional focus teams and inboxes so that people are matched with the customers that they're speaking to. And we're still learning as we like try this new model. But yeah, but like I say, we've kind of always made sure that we have some sort of connection around the world, which I think is important.
Awesome. And I like how you say that you are always keen on experimenting and learning, because I think it's so important in the modern world, especially in the B2B SaaS space, to be able to learn constantly. And speaking about your customers, actually, I would like to quote one of our customers who once said that localization is a shortcut to growth. And for some companies operating specifically like in the European regions, at some point they hit the barrier of their home market, and then they realize that they have to go out there, and that's where they make the decision to localize their product. And obviously, there are lots of pieces that come together with that, including the customer support team. And for what I've seen, what I've experienced, there's like obviously a different pattern between like B2B companies, between B2C companies, whether they want to go, in the B2B world, it might be fine to live just with the English language, because you're dealing with the businesses. In the B2C, it might be a bit different. But since you have such a large customer base and different customer support teams of different products, different business models, and I was curious to know how many Intercom customers operate in multiple markets, regions, and if there is any pattern between like B2B and B2C.
Yeah, so overall, like 23% of Intercom customers around that operate like in multiple markets. So we have a few sort of like things that we've kind of patterns and different things that we've spotted along the way. So like software and technology companies are more likely to be multi-country. So like, I guess the hypothesis there really would be like, these companies are more developer heavy, developers are expensive. These companies are more willing to sort of look beyond their headquarter country for talent. And again, as I mentioned earlier, like, their product is software, and software like is easier to export. So, from day one, their market is global, and I think or their market is the world. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. Smaller companies have a lower multi-country rate, which makes sense given that they have fewer employees. I think that makes a lot of sense. We do see that like B2B companies actually have a high multi-country rate. I'm not too sure exactly on why this might be. But overall, like we're kind of seeing more recently, kind of since 2019, that it's pretty static across the board. Slight decrease in multi-country customers since 2019, and I guess COVID is probably a factor in this, forcing companies to kind of consolidate operations, and probably supported by the fact that like travel and transport has seen a really sharp decline since in industries kind of listed, but and has been like hardest hit by COVID. So a few little snippets of info there, I think, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, quite a few interesting insights that you've shared. And you mentioned COVID. I think, we are all impacted by COVID, and it might, for some companies, it means like for ours, for example, we've decided to go fully remote, and that's where we started to hire people globally, and also expanded our support team to cover more hours. But for some others, it might mean, as you've said, decreasing the operations and maybe not looking elsewhere because of the nature of their business. And I want to circle back to the fact that you mentioned, so software companies usually when they start operating, they are global from the day one, right? And they might appeal to the international customer base. What are some of the, maybe you can provide top 3 things that you think support teams should think of when their company is global from the day one, or in case of some other companies when they start to expand into other regions and appeal to international customers?
Yeah, so there's definitely there's a lot of things, but I tried to keep them to 3. I think like documentation, localized documentation is really important. Again, like I always think of that, really helping your customers help themselves as much as possible, where you can have them do that before they even need to speak to a person. is always super helpful. So, I think that's definitely an important factor to consider. I think when you're looking at, again, regional support where it's possible, having people being able to connect like during their time zone, during customers' time zones is really important. But also just like having a regional understanding, like understanding how people work in the places that you're supporting. I think something really interesting that we found, at some point, I think it was when I was covering a weekend shift at one point, and I was like, it's really busy on a Sunday. Like, why is this? Like, but it turns out, there's plenty of countries that Sunday is not a day of rest, and it's, it's an important like start of the weekday for people. And I think it's making sure that you understand these things and the way that people work in your local, in the places that you're supporting is like super important. I think as well, setting expectations with customers is really important. Again, having resources available is so key, but making sure that you're like setting expectations with customers early. Like if you're not going to be able to get back to them because you don't have a team that's working during their time zone, like I think that's okay if that's the case, but like letting them know what to expect and when to expect to get a response. And you can use your own tools that you have available to you to do this. And with Intercom, we have plenty of things available to help set those expectations and communicate that with customers, so that they know what to expect. And like I think that can definitely help. So a few things there that I think are definitely important to factor in early on when you're deciding to, or when you're going global, I guess.
Yeah, here in Localized, we can absolutely relate to the definitely to the time zones. When the team was small here in Localized, and we already at that point we had quite a lot of international customers, including the customers from the US. So we've been sharing across the team members, not only the support agents, but overall, like also our co-founders used to answer in Intercom to make sure that you can accommodate the user when they need your help. And that's very important. But I want to focus on another example that you've provided. So when you said that you've been working on the Sunday shifts, right, and that you understood that there are some countries that that are working on Sunday, unlike us in Europe, for example. And I think the point that you're mentioning here is very important. Some cultural differences that there are, and for those people who are maybe didn't have an experience with the localization, they also often think about it as just a translation, that you want to translate a documentation or you want to translate your message to your user. But in reality, it's way more complex. It's different because there are so many cultural nuances. There are so many cultural things that are involved that you want to make sure that your messaging is spot on, that you don't use any like forbidden words or anything that can backlash to your company. And like one more thing that is very important is when you mentioned the documentation as well, the importance of the documentation, and when you it relates both to the software but also to the support documentation. When you don't invest into the localization of your product and also on your invest into the localization of your documentation early on, that might cost you actually even more than you think down the line, because you might lose some audience who might not find as much relevance in your product, or who might not find an answer in your support documentation. And the earlier you start doing it, the better. And you definitely capture this audience that might have been missed. And I have one more question, kind of moving on to the topic of the strategy. Support teams are quite often the ones who would spot some first signals, like for example about the product. For if you bug reports, some feature requests, they come through the support guys, and they have a lot of this knowledge. But also I feel like sometimes the support team might be the first to understand that actually we have a lot of the new customers and new users coming from the specific regions, right? And that might serve as a signal to the company that, okay, maybe we should look in more details on that region because there is a market that needs our product. And that's a very important piece, I believe. And from my personal experience, I've seen that a lot of the companies the decision about going global sits within the obviously within the leadership, but they might consult with product, with marketing, with sales, but they don't often consult with the support teams, which is a shame, and I think that's a great resource. So how important do you think it is to let support teams have a strong voice that can impact the strategy, and then it can impact the globalization strategy as well?
Yeah, like I think it's so important. Like I'm, always banging that drum that like support, you need to listen to your support teams. Like they're the people who are at the front line. They're talking to customers. They're hearing what our customers need firsthand. And I know that you spoke about this when we chatted before, just about like how in Lokalise, like support is the heart of the organization. And I loved hearing that, because that's the same at Intercom. We're such an important part of the company, and all teams will check in with support on a regular basis to see how our customers are feeling. But also, and as you mentioned earlier, like we use Intercom to support our customers. So like we're like our biggest kind of expert, really, across the board, which is great. So we're constantly giving feedback. We're constantly like encouraged to give feedback based on our own experiences with the product, but also like what we're seeing from customers firsthand. And something that we do at Intercom is that we do these CS sessions, whereby we have like weekly sessions where people from around the company can actually come and sit with support and see what our customers are asking, find out where their problem points are, and also just find out how customer support works and how hard it is, because it's really hard. And I think people forget that as well, But, to go back to your question, like it's so important in so many areas. Of course, globalization is part of that. And again, like we've seen that in the past, the time zone mismatches that I mentioned, like our support team noticed that straight away. They were like, there's loads of customers who are writing into us and they're connected with someone in Dublin and they're already gone to bed. So, there's this like gap there and we need to fix that. And so that came from the support team, and that was something we were able to fix because of that. And so, so I totally think, look, I think talking to your customer support team, like soliciting feedback, having a place where they can constantly provide like regular feedback is super important. And I think your support team should always be the heart of your company. I think that's key for sure.
Absolutely, I agree with that on 100%. And actually, also you mentioned, how that support is at heart of your organization, and how you use the product itself. As a product person, I love it. When you have such a lot of people knowledgeable who are using the tool day in and day out. Obviously, you will have interviews with the customers, but you have such a good resource also of learning about the product from the team that you have at your disposal. And we talked slightly in the beginning about like the fact that support teams, when they see that there is a lot of the demand from the international customers, they might decide to build teams that are spread across the globe to cover different time zones. But also when you start, and that might be a bit more relevant to the B2C guys, but when you start receiving the inquiries in the different languages, you might start thinking about hiring people who will be able to speak these languages and who will be able to assist users in their native language. And it might become very costly. So I think we should not lie here. It might be very costly and very time consuming to find these people and to build this team. But I know that in Intercom, even though you cover all the time zones, sometimes you still receive requests from in different languages that your agents are not able to cover, that the languages that they don't speak. Maybe you can share some hacks, some ways how you deal with this, with these guys at the moment.
Yeah, it's definitely, it can be challenging. Like, I mean, Intercom has lots of localization kind of opportunities for customers to use for their customers. And so I think that there are times where like we do set expectations that at the moment we only offer support in English, but we do get people who write into us maybe assuming that we will offer support in their language, and that can definitely be challenging at times. Again, like, we sometimes will have to use translation tools to help us. But we also will try and set expectations in the moment and say, like, only offer English support at the moment, and sometimes customers can then adapt and can speak English and can, kind of talk to us then. But, there are other ways, I think, to get creative. Like, I think, if you do understand what the issue is, you can, use kind of screen grabs, use images, like point out how to fix something. And maybe through a video, you can talk someone through a little bit easier sometimes. But yeah, it can definitely be challenging. Again, we do try to utilize tools that we have available to us as much as possible. And I think definitely working with Lokalise makes sense. And again, like I was saying before, having customers be able to help themselves as much as possible before having to even get to an agent, I think is also a key if you can't expand on your team at a given time. But yeah, I think there's a few little tips in there.
Absolutely, and something that we've discussed also in the beginning of our conversation. So the importance of the documentation. So, for example, if you're a team that doesn't have enough, budget to hire people who will be able to speak the languages of your users, what you can do at least is localize your support articles. And yeah, as you've mentioned, I think it's such a nice thing that tools like Localized and Intercom can complement each other quite well. Here, you guys have a very powerful, sophisticated functionality of managing the support articles, and with the tools like Localized, it's easy to push and pull the articles and allow translators utilize the tool like Localized, where they would have the translation memory, machine translation, and so on, to effectively and efficiently translate and localize the articles, and then push it back whenever it's ready. And then even if the team doesn't speak these languages, the support team, it already makes it so much easier for the users to have a documentation available in their language when they need it, and that might also reduce the number of the support tickets going your way. Mm-hmm. And yeah, as you've said, I think we have a privilege here, like Localized Intercom. We are a B2B product. We might, English is a standard language between the businesses, but for the B2C guys, also there's some shortcuts, some workarounds to answer in the native language, so that the people, so that the users who inquire in their language can receive the immediate answer with some plugins that Intercom has, including the Localized plugin, for example. And then basically your support agent would not have to know the language. They would be able to reply in their own language, and then the message would be automatically translated and routed to this user. And even if it might not be like ideal, translation will be translated using machine translation engines, but still it would be enough to understand the essence, and together with some tools like screen grabs and so on, it might translate the point to the user, and so that they would be able to solve the problem. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of the synergy and a lot of the complement pieces that Localized and Intercom have in order to provide a very good support experience also for the international customers, even if you don't have the budget to hire the teams that speak all of these languages. And on that note, I also wanted to ask you one more question. So why do you think products like Localized and Intercom complement each other so well? Even though I've mentioned a couple of things how they can be used together, but maybe there is something more on the high level that you think is common between the tools that makes this collaboration very successful.
Yeah, it is that collaborative nature of both. I think that just they fit so well together. I think there are just a lot of possibilities, I think, by using both. And I think, like you already kind of outlined there, some of the cool things that can be done. I think it can absolutely really, really help with growing your team and growing your team on a global level. I just think it all works together so well. But what really struck me as we were chatting and learning more about Localized as well for myself was not just the collaborative nature and how well the products work together, but we seem to have similar sort of approach to just the culture. And I mean, again, it struck me when you spoke about how important your support team is. I think that's really, really interesting, and how you view the support team. And I think there's a few kind of similarities there for sure, which is really interesting.
Absolutely, and I think that's the cultural aspect. It's even more important because there's this collaborative approach. It translates not only to the product, but also it translates to the people that work for that company. They're always willing to work together, help people within the company, but also help the users that are using the product, and that's definitely awesome. And I found the same about Intercom, and loved it about you guys, how how you approach the things. I think that can serve as an example to a lot of the companies in the industry, and I guess that's why you see so much success in terms of growing your product, because there is also a very bright and cool team behind it. I think that more or less wraps it up, unless maybe Leanne, you had any questions that any thoughts that you wanted to share. But if no, I think we can proceed to the Q&A session.
No, I think this has been a great chat so far. I am nervous about the questions, though. Like I say, first webinar, but I think I'm looking forward to it as well.
I'm pretty sure our users will be, and our people who are listening to us now, they will be pretty kind and moderate with the questions. And then in case there is something that we cannot answer on the spot, then we'll circle it back.
Cool.
So let me take a look at the questions tab. I will try to find some of the questions that are perhaps upvoted. Okay, so there was a question about the recording. Emil's answered that. And here is a question from Vikas. What is the typical localization cycle for a new company, and how Lokalise helps to expedite the process? Oh, that's a very interesting yet challenging question to answer. So the localization cycle might be different depending on the company maturity, and depending on where they are at and what they want to achieve, and what exactly they're localizing. There's some companies that localize, they have a lot of the content going on, but they don't care about software as much. There are also software companies who care about software way more. I will talk from the software perspective because we mainly discuss the kind of the tech world today. So these guys, for them, the typical localization cycle would be they will join in, they will try. First of all, they need to have their code prepared, internationalized, in order to be able to do the localization properly. After this step is done, they will plug into the tools like Localized or similar solutions to that will be integrated into their CI/CD pipeline, so that they can continuously deliver new strings and continuously localize and translate them. So this is called a continuous localization workflow. And that's something that all the software companies are trying to achieve, because it's so important that localization process is not an afterthought, but it goes hand in hand with the agile development process. As you don't want to build a feature and then wait until it's properly localized and can be shipped to the market. So that's a typical localization cycle that companies would aspire to have, but there's so many pieces that go underneath that. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. I will also try to find some questions that are related to Intercom and Leanne.
I see a couple there that are cool, actually.
Okay, so let's go then in the order. I see a question from Dave, who is asking, does Intercom support automatic routing of incoming messages to customer support users based on region?
Yeah, totally. We actually do this ourselves. So like you can set up inboxes based on region, and then you can set rules that will direct those conversations into that specific inbox. So that's something that we use at the moment. And with workload management, you can then kind of set it up so that certain teams, so you can have like your team in EMEA will be pushed conversations specifically from that inbox. So very high level explanation of it, but it is possible. It requires a little bit of setup, but that's how we do things at the moment. So we have like inboxes for EMEA, for EMEA CSS1, EMEA CSS2, and CSE, and it works that way.
And actually, I can add a little bit here. I didn't mention it before, but for example, the Localized plugin that is available on the Intercom, it doesn't only help you to translate the incoming inquiries to the native language, like to English, for example, and then translate it back once you answer, but it also helps to route the message, incoming message, depending on the language that is being sent in. So for example, let's assume you have some agents who speak German, and you can automatically route this message, the German message, to these people so that they would be assigned, so that they would take it, but not some other people. And then, for example, if you receive something from French, but you don't have any French-speaking people, then it will be routed to like whatever the inbox that is configured on the Intercom side.
Cool.
Did we answer the question?
I hope so.
Dave? I hope so, yeah. But in case of anything, they feel free to add any comments. So let's click that we're done with this one, and let's move on.
There's one there about...
I've already popped up one. So will you be adding integrations for other customer support apps? Our nonprofit uses Help Scout, and we are about to launch a new website, which was translated into 10 languages using Localized, but now we have set an expectation for support in those languages. That's a great question. Yes, so that's one of our kind of product priorities as well, to continuously build the integrations with the tools that our customers use, with their tool stack, with the tools where their content sits. So that might be a possibility. I won't comment specifically on the Help Scout. We can discuss it in private, but the generic answer would be yes. We're focusing on rolling out more connectors with the tools, like with the support tools as well. Was there a question, Leanne, that you wanted to tackle?
I saw one there about Intercom documents and escalate product feedback. Do you see that one?
Yes, I can see it from Guillermo, right?
Yeah, cool. So, so how do we escalate product feedback to product teams? So there's kind of a few ways that we would do this. Like we use tags, and we would tag conversations so that they would go to specific teams. And there is a process then for review for those teams to then review that information that comes through. But also, I kind of touched on it earlier, the CS sessions, like our product teams will actually sit with CS on a regular basis and actually like talk to customers and get feedback kind of live in the moment, which is really cool. But then on top of that, we utilize our support team as well as much as possible. So any feedback that's coming in, we would do like, product teams would do like fairly regular sessions to kind of check in and to see if there's like feedback that we're seeing a lot of, similar feedback. And again, like I was saying before, we really sort of understand the value of our support team and how much they actually see this feedback, like, straight up. So hopefully that kind of helps. There's a few ways that we do it. We take it very seriously. The main thing would be tagging in the moment, but we would do a lot of like sessions with support teams and product teams together as well.
Awesome. As a product person, I'm happy to hear that. Let me click that we're done with this one. There was a couple more. I've seen one from Bjorn. So is there any new features in the roadmap for Localized Intercom or on the Intercom help article side? How mature do you feel the feature help center is and the actual Localized Intercom articles integration? So quite a few questions in one. I can start answering some, and then Leanne, feel free to take on the others. So speaking about the Localized and the Intercom articles integration, it's fairly mature. We here in Localized, what we do is we constantly iterate and improve based on the feedback of the customers that we have. So far, so good. So we have quite a few customers who use the integration. There were no major complaints, and it's working pretty well. And then, if there is anything on the roadmap, I think for now, what is there? That's basically, we don't have any short-term plans of adding something else, improving something else, but there's definitely potential, and if we see more potential, that we can think of some other solutions which might concern both of these tools, Localized and Intercom. And I will let you, Leanne, answer the rest of the questions.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I don't think this is possible at the moment, but it could be cool. I'm giving you a live feature request for Localized to work with like resolution bot and or custom bots and stuff. Could be really cool because again, I think there's lots of potential there.
Yep.
I'm not sure if the other questions, are they not for Localized maybe? Let's see. Yeah, so from Intercom's point of view, like we don't have a public roadmap, so I can't really speak to that at the moment, like anything that we would be working on that side. So I think, Alex, you've kind of answered all that, really.
Sounds good. Awesome. Can I click that we're done with this one? I will be taking the ones that are upvoted, because I see that we have quite a few still left. So Dave is asking, what's your suggestion on CMS for an online travel agency that operates in 70+ countries and could support Localize? Very good question, and I think there's so much that comes under this question. There's so many unknowns that I have now at the spot about your company, your business, and that might impact the decision, the choice of the CMS system. We integrate with a couple of CMSs, and including Contentful, including WordPress. There are a couple more in the pipeline as well. I would say that the ones that we integrate with are pretty cool products, and but they also, each of them would be used in the different environment based on depending on what is the context. So, and I think to answer properly this question, I would have to know a bit more context. But from those that we have an integration with, I think you can definitely explore them. So there is one more that is uploaded. Where do you see the UX writing in the process of the localization? Also, very good question. I think what is picking up, and you've probably seen it as well, because we've been writing about it in the blog. We've been doing the webinars about it, but really initiating the localization at the design stage. And we do have the plugins with the design tools to enable that. And what we've seen with it is that there were way more UX writers that come into play, that were working closely with the UX design teams, and were writing the copy, and they were the ones also like pioneering this new concept of doing the localization at the design stage. So yeah, they sit somewhere in between the UX designers and the translators, and they are often the ones pioneering for the tool like ours, because they understand the benefit of having a TMS that integrates and that has plugins with tools like Sketch, Figma, and Adobe. And their voice is definitely very important for us as well. So there is a couple more, I think. The question from Indrich, where do you think is the biggest bang for the buck for a business in terms of localized content? The product UI itself, help articles, marketing materials, regional customer support, all of the above. Very good question. I think that, so if we speak volume, and again, it depends on the nature of the business. There are some businesses that would have way more content than the other ones. So again, as always, probably the right answer would be it depends. But giving my perspective, my personal perspective, usually the highest volume is with the marketing materials, that's for sure. But if you're a tech-first company, then you would like to make sure that your product itself and how users use your product is good enough, and it can translate into into other regions where people might not be as good with the English language. And so here, obviously, the product UI, help articles, and customer support would be three key things, because they would have to navigate the product, they would have to learn about the product, and they would have to speak to the people who know the product. And I think if there is a tight budget, as usually there is, then it would make sense to invest in the proper documentation and the product UI itself, and utilize some of the tools like Localized and Intercom plugin to kind of be good enough in the support aspect of the things. And I think Leanne also mentioned a very good point here. It's also about setting expectations. So if you set these expectations, then your customers would appreciate that for sure. Maybe Leanne, you have something to add here.
No, I think you nailed it there, actually. I totally agree with what you said. And I think, yeah, it does depend. I think there's a lot of factors for sure. And definitely, like, that's the thing I always come back to, is setting those expectations. Expectation is the root of all heartache, isn't it? So I think that's important.
Absolutely. So, and I think we answered all of the, no, we have one last question. And I guess, yeah, we have a minute more to answer that. And this is, how do you prioritize which languages to localize first? I love this question. I think we can circle back to our conversation with Leanne when we said that support teams can actually receive a lot of the signals about it, and they can translate it, and they can pass this feedback to the product teams or other teams who would make the decision. And I think that's a very good way to identify what are maybe some of the languages to which you want to localize first. And also, yeah, don't underappreciate the analytics. So just check, your Google Analytics or whatever analytics software that you're using. What is the region from which most of the users are accessing your product? And then it would be a pretty good indication, together with the insights from the support team, to decide what would be the first languages that you want to go after. And then test it out, test a couple of languages, see how it goes. And you can always test with something more simple. You don't always have to hire the full-blown team of, partner with a vendor to do that. You can first do the first iteration, which will be like a crowdsourced translations using the help from your users. Or it might be, translating everything with the MT and then having somebody post-edit that. So there are a couple of smart ways to go about it, I would say. Leanne, maybe you have something to add here.
No, once again, perfect answer. I think that all sounds really spot on. And again, it comes back to like listening to your support team and experimenting as well, and trying things out and seeing how it works for the smaller kind of things. But yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Well, I guess then it wraps it up for today. Leanne, it was a pleasure to speak to you, not only on the webinar, but in private. I think, there are a lot of things in common between Localized, Intercom, and it was a real pleasure to get to know you a bit better. Thanks also everybody for joining in this webinar. As always, we are happy to provide some useful content, and I hope you guys found this webinar useful. Awesome. See you soon, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.